Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Roundtable special event. This is a recorded special event on the coronavirus that is currently spreading around the world. I'll just briefly introduce the topic. Reminder, there is a text channel directly above this, so you can chat during the event, ask questions, post articles there. I'm not an expert in this. Nevertheless, there's something called the coronavirus. It's a sort of a SARS-like respiratory infection that is fairly contagious. It's already spread around China. There's been hundreds or thousands of cases. It's spread to America and Canada, and I'm not sure where else. It seems at this point to me very unlikely it could possibly be contained, and so will therefore probably become a global pandemic. I heard that the mortality rate was about 4%, which is neither terribly high nor insignificant and would obviously add up to hundreds or thousands of deaths eventually, if not more. And of course, the big risk is that it might mutate and become something far more dangerous, in which case it could be a genuinely serious situation. And of course, even if it isn't mutating, it's going to create huge economic problems, travel bans, people being unable to travel freely, stock market disruptions. So, I think it's fair to say it will become probably a global pandemic because it's spread to India and places where it's going to be virtually impossible, I would imagine, to contain it. So I think people here have followed this quite a bit. Anyone who wants to chime in or ask questions or make comments about this can do so. We're going to do this as a community episode, so everyone's free to contribute. So that being said, does anyone have any information about this or any takes on it? If not,
I had something that I'd like to put forward that could be relevant. So a big thing about China is currently they're, as I understand it, short on doctors, short on medical staff, and short on essentially overwhelmed their system is for the amount of people getting sick. And the fear is that something like this could happen if it does further spread to America and further spread what America's healthcare system would be able to handle versus China's. So I don't know if anyone has any insight to that effect, but it was something I was speaking with another friend on a different server about earlier today that could be possibly contributing.
Sure, I have something to contribute on this topic. The real fear is, right now, it's just killing young and old, like SARS and like pneumonia. But the real fear is that modern society is very much developed upon the notion of supply on demand, where no one really has stockpiles. So let's say truck drivers or doctors or engineers or nuclear reactor specialists decide to stay home for fear of catching it. The real fear is how long can we last if people start staying at home and locking themselves indoors as a society without much supplies.
Yeah, I think the previous point was valid that America might have a better infrastructure, lower population, more sanitation, so maybe it won't spread as badly in America as China. And yeah, as for people staying in and not going out, I actually think that's fairly wise. If there's any kind of dangerous pandemic and you do have any possibility of staying home and staying safe to not catch the disease and spread it to your family, etc. If there's ever a pandemic that was dangerous, I would, if possible, stay home and keep my children home as long as possible. And I have enough supplies to do that for 2 years. So therefore, it would just be the safest way to avoid either catching or spreading a pandemic.
Does anyone know how it started, this disease, like the virus, the origin of it?
Well, actually, there was some gentleman talking in the open chat before this that told me some interesting information. I think the official story is that it was spread initially through seafood, perhaps. I saw a map saying something about some kind of seafood that had been eaten. I had also heard a story that it had something to do with people eating bats, cooked bats in a restaurant. But there's a conspiracy theory angle on this that was brought up that I'm glad I caught, which was that there is a biolab, a level 4 weapons level kind of biolab that contains some of the most dangerous bacteria and viruses in the world in Winnipeg, Canada. And it's a level 4 biolab, which is I guess the highest level. And apparently there was an incident where the Chinese apparently stole something from it or broke into it or something. There was some kind of espionage or theft from this classified lab. And he was putting forward the theory that perhaps the Chinese had stolen this coronavirus from this lab in Winnipeg, and for whatever reason, this had led it to spread. Now, I don't have the details on this. I don't know if this makes any sense or not, but it's just an interesting theory. I'll look for some articles about how this started and also the biolab thing. Does anyone have a feeling about how serious this is going to be? Who thinks it's going to be really serious? Who thinks it's going to be minor?
I think it's going to be very similar to kind of the swine flu, where it spreads and it's going to burn out. And in response to Bober in the chat, what country is that from, pinging at me? I was referring to the difference between America healthcare systems and China's, where they're literally building hospitals and trying to get as many doctors to take care of as many sick people as they can, but they're being just overwhelmed with the number of people coming in, and people are dying, like trying to get treatment, because there's not enough, as I understand it, supplies or doctors to go around. And my concern is if that could happen in America, if it does spread to the extent that it has in the certain provinces of China.
It's sort of a side note, but at the same time as this is going on, there's been a resurgence of the Black Plague in China. There was a number of cases of the Black Plague over a period of a few weeks. And also, there's a pig pandemic originating in China at the same time, which apparently is very serious and is estimated to kill up to 25% of all pigs on Earth. So it's kind of interesting that there's these three emerging, biohazards in China at the same time. It says there's been up to 769 new cases of the coronavirus in one day or something. Death toll rises to 82. It's arrived in Toronto, Canada. It's arrived in America. It's arrived in India. And so obviously it is spreading worldwide. And so if you think that, 4% is not that high of a fatality rate, well, 4% of, potentially millions or billions of people who might end up getting it would be an awful lot of people. And obviously that's even assuming it doesn't mutate and get worse, which could happen at any time. And yeah, spread continues across the globe. So it's clearly going to, it already is. It's a pandemic, right? So it is a pandemic, and a pandemic is not a minor thing. And obviously it has these unprecedented quarantines. There's political anger. There's fear. There's economic uncertainty. There's travel bans. So I heard some people trying to kind of downplay this as like meaningless hysteria or panic, and I don't see how that's possible to make that argument because, a global pandemic is one of the absolute greatest existential threats to humanity. Like it could cause, billions of deaths, and it will inevitably happen. So anytime something like this happens, you simply have to pay close attention to it. You cannot afford to think it's not going to be anything because it easily could be. There's just no way around that. And Miss pointed out that the number of deaths has nearly doubled in a single day, from 42 yesterday to more than 80 today. So if you see that exponential growth of death rates doubling in a 24-hour period, and that happens exponentially, then pretty soon you have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of deaths, potentially. Hopefully not.
The question I think we need to ask in relation to that is, again, in the comparison of America's healthcare system versus China, is like how much access do those people that are suffering have to, for example, antibiotics to combat or such a virus or antivirals? And I don't have that answer right now. I'm trying to Google it as we speak, but I think that is a contributor to potentially those death numbers as well. Because I think in an American population where most people have access to some kind of healthcare, I think the death percentage would be less than it would be in China currently. That's the only argument I would make. Not that it's a pandemic is not something to take serious.
Right. Has anybody heard anything about the effectiveness of masks, for example? Do the N95 basic dust masks or, particulate masks do anything to stop this? Does anybody know? I've heard there's been shortages of these masks and, people racing to get them, but...
Is it airborne? What kind of a virus is it, and what is the size of it? I would assume it does block it, but who knows?
So what it says here, sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oops. Okay, so it says, coronavirus symptoms: fever, shortness of breath, cough, breathing difficulties, diarrhea, gastrointestinal problems, pneumonia, severe acute respiratory syndrome, kidney failure, and death. No vaccines or antiviral drugs available. Symptoms can be treated. Coronavirus, the facts: runny nose, cough, sore throat, high temperature, presumed to have originated from the South China seafood wholesale market in Wuhan. Virus enters through the nose and mouth. It then finds a host cell in the respiratory system. The host cell then bursts and infects other cells nearby. The coronavirus spreads to humans from an animal thought to be a snake at the South China seafood wholesale market. The virus is transmitted between humans and droplets from coughing and sneezing and touching or shaking hands. How it can kill. Most victims of the virus die from complications, including pneumonia and swelling in the lungs. The virus causes swelling in the respiratory system, which can make it hard for the lungs to pass oxygen into the bloodstream, leading to organ failure and death. Severe pneumonia can kill people by causing them to drown in the fluid flooding their lungs. So that's just some basic info on it.
That's then very similar to kind of the Spanish flu of 1918, but I found a Reddit posting here. I'm going to post this. There's not many comments, but two of them claim that anti-AIDS medication has apparently helped weaken the symptoms, and that because it's a coronavirus, it has the ability of, forgive my pronunciation, I believe it's homologous and non-homologous recombination, which makes it essentially difficult to fight against due to mutation after DNA repair. But those are, of course, Reddit comments. Take those with grains of salt.
Reddit comment. No, dude, that's where ETs talk to people through.
So is it going to be difficult to create a vaccine for it because of that?
Potentially. I do know that they've already sequenced the DNA of the virus, and they can detect it, I believe, within 4 hours of a test or less. So they can definitely find out if people have it, but I'm sure they're working on finding a vaccine or some kind of workaround for it, because, of course, if we can vaccinate people ahead of time, then that is ultimately a very good thing in a situation like this, where it is spreading at such a, not necessarily unprecedented rate, but just extremely contagious.
I wonder what the anti-vaxxers would do when they're required to take a vaccination to prevent a global pandemic. If it was a global pandemic, it's not yet. Who knows where it's going to go or if it's going to mutate. But yeah, I'm curious what they would do.
I've also seen some people claiming this is the beginning of the Book of Revelations, or one of the stages of Revelations.
Oy vey.
So
if such an acid.
If 1 million people were infected by the virus, that would be 40,000 dead, which wouldn't be a catastrophe. I mean, it would be 40,000 deaths is an awful lot of people to die, of course. And then if potentially 10 to the power of 9 would be 1 billion people. I'm just, making kind of random assumptions here. But so if you had 10 to the power of 9 times decimal 4, what? My calculator didn't work.
What if we get somebody to infect me with the virus in Austin, Texas? That way we get free press for the internet. I'll be the first one that gets.
And yeah, so you could have, if 1 billion people were infected, if I did that math right, you would have potentially 4 million deaths. So say maybe 1/7 of people got this disease, then you could have as much as 4 million deaths, which obviously is an awful lot. The fatality rate is 4%.
I see, 4%. Yeah, that's definitely not little. But that depends, though. Is it 4% with or without medical care?
I'm not sure. I just saw fatality rate 4%, so I just ran in, possibility of 1 million people infected or 1 billion people infected, and you get between 40,000 and 4 million people dead. Either one of which isn't a lot of people. If you piled up 40,000 people dead in a pile, you wouldn't say that was a small thing. You'd say that was a huge tragedy. If you packed up 4 million people, well, that's almost like a Holocaust.
Yeah, actually it's 40 million. But yeah, that's a lot of people that would die from 1 billion, which is insane. Actually, what can you do? That will happen, but the thing is, most of the death will be focused on poor areas, most likely places with bad medical care, as I think it was Shattuck that was saying that. I'm not sure, but yeah, those places are going to be the places that people will die en masse. I don't think people in the first world countries have to worry about this too much.
Well, and I think it's worth noting that if you're in any regard concerned about this, and I think it would be wise to just take this basic precautions, anybody could just go buy a few things, a little kit that you keep with you. A couple things of hand sanitizer, a couple things of latex gloves, a couple packs of N95 face masks, particulate masks, or better if you can afford better. You can get eye visors. Like I have pandemic kits that get issued by my employer, and so they are kits that are designed to protect you from pandemics. So these come with you get Tyvek suits if you really want to go hardcore, like the Fukushima Fukushima cleanup people wore. They're the same thing like dust painters or pressure washers wear. They're like Tyvek suits. And you put on a little plastic visor, a little N95 mask, your latex gloves. I mean, this would be if it gets really bad and you're really concerned. If not, you just keep some latex gloves in your pockets, wear those, change them periodically, use your hand sanitizer every time you touch a doorknob or anything like that. And wear glasses or goggles or masks to prevent those droplets from getting in your eyes. And if you were to take those precautions, you would probably be able to significantly reduce your risk, even if it did get bad where you live.
And I just dropped an article confirming that anti-HIV drugs lopinavir and ritonavir are actually being using their anti-retrovirals, which block the ability of HIV to bind with healthy cells and reproduce. And apparently that is showing some kind of result in treating this coronavirus.
That's good to know. That's good news. For reasons unknown, Dr. Word has posted Super Mario Sunshine in the coronavirus channel. That's interesting. So, does anyone else have thoughts on this? Is there anyone who's worried about this? Not gonna lie, I'm not very worried about this because, from personal level, because I have a typically very strong immune system. I have a lot of supplies. I could stay indoors. I have pandemic kits, and I just have a feeling that even if this does get bad, it won't be the end of the world. Not that it's a minor thing. There's also a dark argument to be made that pandemics are part of how the Earth controls population, and we have a huge environmental crisis, and maybe we're long overdue for a pandemic. And obviously, I don't want a bunch of people to die. But if a bunch of people did die, there'd be less negative things coming from those people. I don't mean they're worthless or bad people, but there's an overpopulation problem. So every cloud has a silver lining. I'm not saying pandemics are good, but there are some good outcomes from them.
I have a little bit of a worry. It's not often, but it should be often said. It's an old quote. I'm not really sure where it comes from. But society is only ever 4 meals away from collapse, and that is what I'm most worried about. I'm actually worried about what you're actually wanting people to do, which is to stay home and not to have necessary people doing their jobs. That's what I'm most worried about.
Well, if you have a job that you have to do, then you should probably do it if that's your ethical obligation. But you might want to wear masks, you might want to wear gloves, you might want to use hand sanitizer, you may want to be very careful about what you touch and how close you get to people. But I agree, if you have an essential job, cooling a nuclear reactor or something, then yeah, please don't just not do it. But if you can stay home and avoid crowded and dangerous places, that might be a good idea. I think some people may be locked out of the voice by low rank or something.
I'll go through them.
I think there's something wrong here for sure. Most of these people cannot talk for some reason.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I believe
it shows their server mute. So you have to
I think that tech might have set the channel up to mute pages and swires upon entry. So if someone is able to change that, then
yeah, that is the case, and I will switch it. Hopefully this will.
I'm
work.
unmuting a lot of people right now, so there should be
Yeah.
half the rooms in.
Hopefully.
Okay,
Well, I'll
so-
say I'm.
Anyone here?
go ahead. Anyone who wants to speak up, you've all been unmuted
Yeah.
now, so everyone can participate.
Test. Can you
So
hear me?
I'm kind of like moderately concerned. I've gotten some like basic safety gear. I got some masks and I have some hand sanitizer and latex gloves and stuff. It was hard to find the mask, but my concern is because I work at a major university on the western part of America, where there's kind of a strong Chinese population. It is perfectly logical that where I work would be one of the places that would get hit early on, if this were really to spread. So I have kind of a moderate worry. At the same time, I'm, relatively young and healthy, and my immune system works, and I know I would probably survive. But it's like there's that part of it, but then there's the part of like if you live in an area that gets quarantined, and then your access to basic resources becomes this huge problem because of the quarantine. I don't know that that's a stressful thing to live through,
Hello, can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Uh, so I posted a little bit a little while back, Lancet scientific paper about coronavirus. It's actually quite interesting. I've heard a few people say that they're pretty young and they're healthy, but when you actually read this paper and they go into detail about a majority of the people who are being hit the hardest by this actual virus, it's actually people between the ages of 25 and 49 that are ending up in the ICU because of this virus. And I think that's where this virus actually comes off as different than other viruses we've actually encountered. Also, even though people continually call it the coronavirus, it's actually called 2019 COV. That's the actual name of this. Coronavirus is just name for the types of viruses that it's actually like SARS and MERS. And this virus also appears to have a nearly 2-week incubation period with the amount of cases that have been popping up all over the world. And the fact that it's possibly airborne to the fact that it is spreading quite quickly. I mean, you take a look at cases of MERS, it took 6 months to reach almost the levels that this virus has reached in almost a month. And even if it does have a low kill rate of roughly 3%, that's still a lot once you start getting to millions of people infected. Also, the N95 mask that I heard a few people bring up, I would just suggest that people make sure that it's actually fitted to their face well. And you're not supposed to wear that for long periods of time because the amount of actual oxygen you're getting into your system through the mask is lower than it would normally be without the mask. So wearing it for long periods of time can have bad consequences. Those are just a few of the things I wanted to bring up.
I heard someone talk about the downfall of society. How we should, if possible, stay home. But if you have a important job to fulfill, please do it. I've actually been seeing a lot of videos in China where, in cities like Beijing, you have Beijing people discriminating against Wuhan people. And, these people who are only looking for help, but actually become the most helpless, surrounded by those who can help but are unwilling because they're afraid of becoming infected. So I'm kind of interested to see if we may start seeing a pattern of like discrimination against. I'm not saying it because I know that it's not contained to only one race, but considering the region that it originates from, I'm actually wondering if we're going to start seeing some kind of like minor discrimination against Asians in America.
It's possible. I mean, there could be some fear, but as soon as it spreads and gets free in other countries, I don't think there'll any longer be much of a association with China, because sooner or later it'll just be an international pandemic. So yeah, first maybe Chinese people trying to cross borders will be detained or turned back. But once it just takes off all over the world, then I don't think it would be associated with a particular group of people anymore.
Yeah, that's more than likely, and for the people worrying about society breaking down, I mean, major governments, if they did mess up, I don't believe it would be for a very long time. The most you would probably have to worry about, at least from my experience in New York City, when that blackout happened, was the police weren't the ones who got control very quickly. It was actually the gang population who actually controlled the streets, basically acted like their own police force because they wanted to keep control for themselves, because if it gets too chaotic, they can't make money. So you'll have people on a local level who will try to take control.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about the inevitables, right? Travel bans, not being able to cross borders, potentially being separated from your family. If your family's in China and you're in America, your family will not be able to come visit you from China or to leave China to come stay with you to get away from it because they may not allow travel, possibly. Another possibility would be major economic problems, workers getting sick, people being afraid to go to work, stock investors being afraid this will affect stocks and therefore selling stocks and therefore making stocks tank, stock market disruptions, hundreds of thousands or millions of deaths. And I'm not really sure what else. I mean, it could potentially get worse. Obviously, worst case scenario, it mutates into something really lethal and becomes the next Black Plague and kills 90% of life on Earth, I guess. But that seems quite unlikely. More likely, though, you could have millions of deaths. That doesn't seem too unlikely. And millions of deaths is a lot of deaths. It's a lot of deaths. So I guess.
Yes.
Sorry. Go. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Queen. Were you going to say something, Queen?
I was just going to say that
You're roboting, Queen.
I think it's interesting to think about how. Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about how.
Yeah, you're roboting, Queen. She's got to be trying to drive. Oh yeah, it's her drive time.
The Matrix glitch.
Good for the recording, though, dude. We need at least one Queen robot experience in the long term.
Yeah, the daily Queen roboting experience between 8 and 9.
I have a quick question, if anyone could answer this. Does anyone have any ideas of, if this virus does go global and it does get really bad, how hard communications will become over the internet? Because a lot of people, they mostly use websites like Facebook and things like that. I don't know if things like that would be disrupted too badly with a virus spread of nature, killing a lot of people, possibly.
I guess.
Yo, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you can go ahead first. I've already spoken once.
Yeah, I would think certainly that it would create some sort of panic, because as they have seen that it also spread airborne and it can spread to your body even through your eyes. So yeah, it could be very likely to create panic around the world if it keeps spreading to other nations.
I wouldn't be surprised if major population centers were quarantined and they were actually blocked off from the outside world. And that if that were to happen, I wouldn't be surprised if they put in, information blocks, cutting off the internet and communication from the outside world.
It's very possible.
Only if that to happen. Could they really cut off the internet? I mean, it was designed so people could stay up even during nuclear warfare.
Well, it was designed for the U.S. government to stay up even in the event of nuclear warfare. But the same government that invented it can simultaneously take it away.
I can hear what you're saying. I'm just mostly highly skeptical about that, only because I come from a computer security background, and even the Chinese government tries to completely shut down the internet, and they still can't do it out there. And they nearly have complete totalitarian control over ISP.
I mean, I'm sure people will find ways to get around any kind of information blocks or internet blocks, but in the most part, the entire key of it would be to stifle information flow as much as possible.
So
So
just
does this? Sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
Does this Discord have a plan for how to keep communications going in the event that this gets bad?
Well, I think the Discord itself would be a good way to stay in touch. Whether we're talking a natural disaster, a war, a pandemic, or anything, we have a global community in real time, 24/7 voice and text contact here. So we'll be able to get, if this progresses, we can continue to do these events as it worsens or whatever, and knock on wood, and then people can tell us what's going on in their part of the world and what it's like. We sort of see ourselves partly as an independent global news media organization in the regard that we tend to have at least one person in almost every country, and therefore we can sort of have an informant or what do they call them, a correspondent from any different country. So I know we have people from China, we have people from different parts of the world who can give us live updates of what things are like in their part of the world. We can stay in touch. I don't see why a pandemic would ever knock out Discord. If it did, we're also on all social media, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter. We have a website, we have a forum, we have a YouTube, we have an email. So there's many, many ways to stay in touch with the community. And if one forum went down, and again, I don't see any reason why a pandemic would cause Discord to go down. But if you ever find that one part of the community is inaccessible to you, just go to one of the other parts and reconnect with people there, and then we'll tell you where to go to get back into whatever part of it you want. So this is a very resilient network because this community is not just a server. We have 2 backup servers. If this server goes down, there's a clone. If that server goes down, there's a clone of that. And we're on every single possible platform, from Patreon to GoFundMe to Reddit to YouTube to Tumblr to Instagram, etc. So Facebook, you name it.
Good to know. Thank you. Does anyone have an opinion on the possibility of people actually just cause massive panic? Also, I mean, you have people who love to scare people. That's one thing I'm very worried about with this. Is less that the virus will start killing. It's more that people will start capitalizing on this to actually cause panic.
I mean, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. I apologize.
I think, no, Normal Man has the mic. Sorry. Go ahead, Normal Man.
Western media has its highest earnings report rate whenever they're covering negative topics. So I believe it'll be Western media that trumps it up the most. Anything they can find, they'll trump up and repeat on loop. That's all.
Does anyone believe how the U.S. will respond to the fact that if this does get bad and they do have a vaccine, something finally for this, that they'll probably make it mandatory? I only bring that up because back in July in City, there was actually a measles outbreak that the news never really brought up, and New York City basically said, yeah, your vaccination is mandatory in these areas, and didn't let families, and made it mandatory that everyone in areas that were infected to get a vaccination.
I mean, in school districts, your kids can't go to the school district. Someone is Longshanks or hot mic pre-Bedman.
If you ever see someone hot micing, just instantly mute them.
There was 108 deaths from the vaccine in the last 10 years.
How many deaths, sorry?
108 from the
From
vaccine.
which vaccine?
The measles. They tracked it down to a measles Mary.
Now recording.
Uh-oh.
We got disconnected there for a second. I apologize.
That's okay. Does that mean we lost the recording?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Well, for the measles, isn't it an MMR vaccine? Measles, mumps, and rubella, isn't it like 3 in 1? I don't think you can separate it and get just the measles vaccine.
Yeah,
it was an MMR vaccine.
You said how many people died?
108.
Out of how many vaccinations delivered?
It was out of 0 cases of wild. That there was nobody that died from the wild virus. It was 108 that died from the vaccine virus.
I mean, I'm just kind of interested in how many vaccinations were actually delivered, though. Because if you consider the fact that, there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who will have adverse reactions to vaccines because, it's a foreign matter that the body hasn't seen before, which is the entire point, to get the immune system to recognize and create antibodies.
Yeah, I understand
that. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to vaccines, I mean, in a lot of American school districts, you have to have certain vaccines to be able to have your kid enrolled in the school. I believe it's like tetanus. In some school districts, it's measles. Sometimes I believe it's chickenpox. It's never anything like the flu that changes every year, but like those polio is another one. But never anything that's mutates on such a level that it requires a new one every year or anything like that. But the amount of people that actually get vaccines and get access to that herd immunity, which is essentially where some people are vaccinated that they don't get the disease, and the people that don't have it don't get infected with it. But the amount of people that are adversely affected by vaccines percentage-wise is such a small amount in the grand scheme of things, because anyone that has any adverse reaction to the vaccines that we know of currently is due to either allergies or some other medical complication with that vaccine. It's not a very common thing at all.
Yeah, but there's some things that they do not test for, like mutagens, carcinogens, and what they do to fertility. There's lots of things that they just do not evaluate.
For me, I'm less interested in how many people die and the fact that, at least in communities such as I'm in New York City, I've gone to some of these poor neighborhoods, and you often hear them say, "Yeah, don't get the vaccination because the government's trying to kill you." And this is a pervasive mimetic knowledge that is just constantly getting spread around. And you'd be surprised how many people, when you talk to them, don't believe that they should get a vaccination. And there are people who actually react violently to anyone suggesting that you should get it, believing that, oh yeah, you're trying to kill by trying to make you get it. That's what I'm more worried about, is the perception that I shouldn't get it and you force me to get it, with the government saying you have to get it.
Well, I don't have in particular anything more to say about this. I think we've talked a bit about the precautions you can take, what the current situation is, what the signs and symptoms of coronavirus are, something about where it may have come from, something about where it may go. Is there anything else anyone else wants to bring up, or is this basically all that we have to say at this point? We just have to monitor this as it goes forward.
Hello?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if anyone knew what mutation stage it was in, like stage 2, or what was going on with that. And quick question: if this hits India, because there are about 5 suspected cases so far, how bad could this get? Thank you.
Well, currently there's only one mutation, which was the mutation for it to jump from animals to humans. But that's as far as we know for right now. And for India, it would, depending on where it hits, usually there are 2 different sides of India. There are the very advanced side of India, and then you have the very rural, and it's almost like a third world country where they don't even have sewage. They are actually defecating in the streets. It would largely depend, but if it does hit India hard, it would be pretty deadly, considering the fact that if you take a look at the Ganges River, or I'm sorry if there's anyone Indian in here, I didn't say that right.
Ganges River.
Yes, the Ganges River actually is very polluted, and actually there's raw sewage in there, and people bathe in there every single day. So, considering the fact that it is spread through bodily fluids too, it would be pretty bad.
And yeah, there are also dead bodies in there, and the website I've been using to keep track of how many cases there are just got updated literally a minute ago. They're now saying there's over 4,000 cases and 107 dead.
What website are you using?
Just post your sources if you can into the text channel so everybody can see them.
I've been posting that, but the channel's going so fast. All right, I'll post it right now. There you go. There's a live map. It's being updated from various sources. This website is actually connecting the WHO, the CDC, the NHC, and a few other health organizations' data into a real live map that is getting updated every couple of. And
Thank you.
It was, yeah. So yeah, you can use that to keep track of the cases. It even has a map that shows you where the cases are. And as I said, right now it's almost 4,500 cases and 107 dead, with only 63 people recovered.
How many people recovered?
63 out of the 4,474 people infected, and out of that number, 107 are dead.
There's 107 people dead and 63 recovered, which is
What about
a pretty
the
grim outlook on what, it's a pretty grim outlook on what the results may be.
What about the percentage of young adults, in age between 20 and 30? Did they all die or they all survived?
I'm currently looking for that data from the WHO. I emailed. I'm currently waiting for someone to get back to me from that. But the Lancet the scientific paper I put up, that actually is showing that a majority of the people who are ending up in intensive care and need closest watch whenever they become infected with this are actually between the ages of 25 and 49. So I wouldn't be surprised if being there in intensive care, they're probably the ones dying. But that is speculation on my part. I need to actually find the exact numbers of people who died. I just have the exact numbers of people who are currently in intensive care.
Jesus Christ.
There are photos.
If you have a situation where the number of dead from yesterday to today is double, and then you just continue that trend, you double a number every day, that's an exponential growth, right? It doesn't just go 1 + 1 = 2. It goes 2 × 2 = 4, 4 × 4 = etc. So it very quickly explodes massively. So it's going to be a lot of people that die, even if this doesn't mutate. This is already a death sentence for many, many thousands of people. So it's not a small thing. A lot of people are going to die. And then if it mutates, then it could be millions.
Oh, yeah, and in the United States, if you actually check the CDC's website, they've only confirmed 5 cases. They're actually testing 110 people as we speak, and they've only cleared roughly 30 of them as not having the coronavirus, but they're still testing another 70 plus to find out if they actually have it. So you'll probably see the cases go up. But my thing is, if they're testing 110 people and it has almost a 2-week incubation period, how many people were they in contact with that now have it and don't know?
I'd just like to read a headline. It says, new coronavirus may be much more contagious than initially thought. A deadly new coronavirus has now reached at least 13 countries. There have been at least 2,794 confirmed cases. Tens of thousands of people are being kept under medical supervision. 81 people have died.
Yeah. It seems that the coronavirus is spreading very fast, and it's pretty grim if you look at the total deaths versus the total recoveries. And based on if that nurse in the YouTube video, what she said is true, for every one person that is infected, there's usually 14 more that has been infected by the one person. So one person infects 14 people, and 14 people, well, 14 times 14, and you get that. And you can see how quickly it can spiral out of control but it seems that the WHO and the CDC is actually being overly cautious instead of completely coming out and saying that this is a worldwide emergency and saying that, oh, we should just watch it very carefully.
I have another question. This is less about the virus and more about our approach to people around us. So I'm in the mindset of you should prepare for if anything happens. You don't have to be crazy about it. Just have some extra food and water to the side. But I find that mindset, at least in New York City where I live, people find that insane. So does anyone have advice on approaches to get people to understand that it's not crazy to, just prepare just in case things go bad?
What I mean,
oh, go ahead.
Yo, Shogun, are you speaking? It says your bubble is going green. I can't hear you.
Can anybody else hear me?
No, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, so just tell Danthal to leave and rejoin the room. Please.
I can hear you now. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
all right. So, yeah, I can hear you. So, listen, it said there could be 100,000 cases already of the coronavirus, 100,000. So, again, if it's doubling every day, 100,000 times 100,000 is pretty fucking a lot. And here's an interesting one because we're a conspiracy theory server. Israeli analyst says one coronavirus conspiracy theory is less crazy than you think. Unconfirmed reports suggest that the Wuhan coronavirus may be a bioweapon developed at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So this is just interesting. I'm going to post this because this is a analysis saying this may be a bioweapon, which is interesting. But I don't know why the Chinese bioweapon would be used against the Chinese. But
okay,
So,
let's say that
question.
it was.
Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Queen.
I can give you one.
Why do you guys think, and this is related to the more conspiracy sector of this, there has been a major outbreak that has killed hundreds of thousands of people every 100 years. In 1720, it was the plague of Marseille in France. 1820, it was cholera. 1920, it was the Spanish influenza. And now 2020, it is coronavirus. So why do you guys think, do you guys think that there's a significant pattern there, or do you think that there's nothing there really?
Well, I'll comment on that, but to give efficacy to the concept that the Chinese might be doing it to themselves, China's going through an issue right now with their age because of the one child law. So there's a big gap between the age of it's going to be an upside down pyramid taking care of the old people in their society. So they might want to just kill off a bunch of old people, dude. They might be that crazy.
I would like to add to this, for instance, real quick, the Spanish flu, we only call it the Spanish flu because the Spanish were the only ones that were openly publicizing that the flu was going on. We actually believe there's good evidence to support that the flu actually originated in China on the train cars when they were coming to end the Great War to fulfill their colonial obligations in the trenches, carrying ammunition and whatnot. And going back to the Black Plague, that's also a disease that originated back in China, coming off the backs of rats from trade ships. It just, China 3 out of 5 has been the source of the plague over the past every couple of 100 years.
Yeah,
I would like
the motive itself, though, would be definitely on the Chinese Communist Party's side, in that if you have done any research on the demographics of China, they're an upside down culture right now because of the growth of the birth stopping. So there's a lot.
Let's say that it was actually made by the Chinese in a lab, and I don't even want to go with they let it loose on purpose. Let's say it was released by accident. What could the international do about that to China for possibly releasing a pandemic that could kill all over the world?
Well, that would certainly almost completely start a war if it was found out that it was a bioweapon, considering the fact that bioweapons are outlawed by international law.
Yeah, but there's something called black operations, which means you do things through agents of the state who have been trained and agreed to not take responsibility for what they do. So even if something is illegal against national law, it doesn't mean that nation states can't or won't do those things. It just means if they do it under plausible deniability, and they deny ownership of these operations. Is what's called black ops. So yes, okay, it's against the law, sure. Many things that are against the law happen every day.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that because it's against the law, it would certainly give countries a basis to start a war.
Well, that's exactly why you use biowarfare instead of regular warfare. Is because when you use regular warfare, you incur an immediate military response. But if you create a biological weapon and release it, it's relatively easy to conceal this fact, right? So you could go just spread it around here, spread it around there in a number of different places, and let it spread. And maybe they'll someday figure out who did it, but maybe they never will. Now, there's a number of sources I just posted about different conspiracy theories related to the coronavirus. The articles are, of course, all saying these conspiracy theories are all false. But, here's a Vice article, the coronavirus is an exciting opportunity for conspiracy theorists. There's people saying Bill Gates made the coronavirus, that there's a patent for it already, that there's a vaccine for it already, that it's made in the U.S., that it was made in Chinese biolab, that it was stolen from a Winnipeg biolab. So plenty of conspiracy theorists already happening. And there'll be more conspiracy theories as it goes on. And in the end, it'll be blamed on multiple different people, probably on America, on Israel, on China.
Well, it definitely fits the criteria for some weird engineered bioweapon, because they're saying that it can lay dormant for 10 days. I mean, if you think of the implications of that, guys, I mean, here the real test to see like if this is going to really break out would to see like it would. There's going to have to be like an exponential growth if it's going to be really bad. So but it'll be really hard to tell because everything lays dormant for 10 days. I mean, think of the implications of that. So, I mean, it could be really
The flu
bad.
can do 12 days, so that's not anything new to viruses.
It does make it almost impossible to manage it, though, because if you can go 10 days without symptoms and you're in China and you visit an area in China, you spend 8 days traveling around, eating different food, meeting different people, shaking different hands, having sex with different women. You feel totally fine. You get back on a plane on day 9. By day 10, you're back in New Zealand, Australia, or Canada. You get sick. You think it's a cold or a flu. Your family's infected. They don't spread it for 10 days. They go to school 10 days, 7 days, 8 days, whatever, spreading it around. I mean, it's not containable, so it's going to run its course. There's no quarantining this now. It's already completely beyond quarantine.
Plus, it's been confirmed to be airborne, which makes it even worse.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very serious. This is extremely serious. There's no dispute about this, right? Like earlier, someone named Squad was saying, oh, you guys are fear-mongering, doom-porning. This is hysteria. No, it's a global pandemic, and global pandemics can and do happen, and they're inevitable, and when they happen, they can kill billions of people. Billions of people is an awful lot of people. What if this mutates and it becomes a highly toxic form that kills 25% or 20% of people, gets it 1 in 5? Then all of a sudden you have hundreds of millions of deaths or more. It's a big deal.
I'm finding a lot of people are still burnt out, because at least the people I speak to, they're still burnt out from the fact that the swine flu, nothing happened, and they keep telling me the same thing. Oh, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. And I'm just like, you guys aren't even bothering to look at a majority of the public I'm speaking to. They're just like, I don't want to look at that. They're more interested in looking at what's going on with the Grammys and things like that. And I'm very worried that the public, after having so many things being told to them on the news, oh, this is going to be the end of the world, this is going to be the big one, 2012, all of these things, and then nothing happens, that it's finally settled in. The normalcy bias has gotten so strong that this virus is actually going to be the possible doom that everyone thought was going to happen. And so many people just aren't prepared because they really, nothing will ever happen.
Hello?
Hey, Danthel. Let me ask you, do you have a take on this coronavirus? I think that was Danthel. Was it not? No, he's not.
No, it wasn't. That was Sid.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
Sounds
like just adding on to who was you, Archive, who was speaking earlier? Usually people have been conditioned for like an annual flu, like Ebola, H1, they've been conditioned for yearly. So when they see this, they're not really going to be worried about it. Even if they're told a high number, they may not really freak out about it. because they're going to be reassured by the governments or news that that we're doing the best, we have the best system or whatever. End of the day, whenever it shit hits the fan, they're going to be panicking. It's going to be hysteria. So it's best just to be prepared. Get ready now.
Yeah, I mean, anytime something like this happens, right? So when the Australian wildfires happened, Revieth was getting respiratory problems from breathing all the smoke. So I told him, you got to go get some masks. He went to get some masks. Well, surprise, surprise, too late. They're sold out. So believe me, if you don't know by now, the time to prepare for shit is before shit happens, not after shit happens. Now, this is a global pandemic. It has already reached Canada. It has already reached the United States. It's going to reach London. It's coming to a town near you. So go buy some goddamn N95 masks. And if you don't, and people start dropping like flies, just remember that you could have spent $10 on a pack of masks today. And if you wait till it's too late, then shame on you. You're a dummy.
Exactly.
Don't forget, it got spread also into France, and you know how the transportation in Europe is. You can go in and out as simple as that. So a very high probability to also spread in Europe.
Good point.
Exactly.
So prepare.
I really
Hey
hope
guys.
a lot of people have been preparing.
Oh, hey, I'm a little late to this chat, but just wanted to add a few thoughts. I mean, nutshell summary in my gut sense is that, is this world-ending apocalyptic, like killing all 7 billion plus people in the world? No, but civilization changing, where 50 to 110 million people possibly could die, like in the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic? Absolutely. We have to wait and see. And from what I've seen, my sense is too that maybe N95 masks aren't quite enough. Maybe you need N100 or P100, but then it's also saying, I've been reading that it's, communicated through the eyes too. So maybe you need a full facial mask, or at the very least get yourself some, ceiling $5, swim goggles to protect your eyes too. It's a wild ride we're in for, I think.
Yeah, and this is a good point, right? So I'll just tell you, I'm issued government issued pandemic survival kits. So it covers all your clothes and stuff. Then it's like a little plastic thing that goes over your face, and then like a little plastic mask that goes over your eyes. It's like a visor, and then it's a mask, and then gloves, and then hand sanitizer. So we've been issued these for a long time in my line of work. We have pandemic survival kits. So you can easily buy one of these. They're not that expensive. And then you could have essentially a government level of precautionary equipment for a relatively cheap amount of money. So just order one online, one for your family. I mean, you don't need just one. They're disposable, so you should buy as many as you kind of can afford, but certainly better to have none, right? That way, if one of your better than to have none, because then if one of your family members becomes sick, say your daughter gets the pandemic, well, you're still going to need to go feed her. You're still going to need to bring her water and food and take care of her. So you should have these kits that you put on, and then you can put on your goggles, your mask, your fucking visor, and your gloves, and your gown. You're going to go in and give her a sandwich and her a glass of water, and that way you're less likely to get sick and spread it to the rest of your family.
Do you have a link to a better source to get N95 masks? I've just gotten mine from Amazon, and I can't seem to find any good ones currently.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a good point, right? You can buy a range of masks, but I just encourage people to start by buying N95 masks because they're not very expensive. You can buy a couple packs of them. You want to get them now. If nothing else, you can probably sell them for 10 times as much later when people panic and want them, or keep them for yourself. But remember, there's many levels of these. Like the really good ones are these like full face visors you can get. I have these full face visors. They're, like what you see more like in a science fiction movie, You can get all different kinds, from the simple dust mask, which is not going to be effective, to an N95 mask, which might be effective, to a full face respirator with, double shield, full face shield, which is certainly going to be very effective, or even a gas mask. So you can buy a number of different kinds of respiratory gear, but since it's a respiratory infection spread by droplets to the eyes and in the mouth, you're going to want at least visors that cover your face, masks that cover your mouth, hands covered by gloves, and gowns or Tyvek suits being optimal, covering your clothes and body. And hand sanitizer. Lots of hand sanitizer and lots of disinfectant wipes to clean your doorknobs, your light switches, your tap handles, your toilet handles, anything that is repeatedly touched, telephones, keyboards. You have to understand a simple principle of pandemics. Pandemics spread through only two possible agencies or agents. One is called vectors and one is called fomites. Vectors are living, moving things like mice or people. A person carrying an infection is a vector, and a mouse or rat carrying an infection would be a vector. A fomite would be a keyboard, a light switch, a doorknob. So a fomite would be an inanimate object that is touched by multiple people and therefore carries the infection, and a vector would be a human or an animal. So be aware of these two things.
Shogun, have you guys discussed the possibility that like a coronavirus, I think from what I've read, can like withstand, it can survive on a water resistant surface for up to a month? So say even shipments that have already come from China and whatnot, like if it's infected dock workers and whatnot, could still be a possibility of an infection point?
I'm not sure exactly what you said, but anything that is either a human or animal carrier, or anything that is touched by a human or animal carrier can be then a carrier. So just remember, every time you touch anything, you got to wash your hands, and that's why you want to actually wear gloves. So it's not a big precaution, right? You put on latex gloves, you touch a doorknob, you go inside, you take the gloves off, you throw them out, you put on new gloves, you type, you do this, you do that. You take the gloves off before you eat or whatever. And also you have to try to not touch your face, right? The number one thing that spreads these infections is touching your face with your hands, rubbing your eyes, rubbing your nose, rubbing your mouth, touching your face. The average person touches their face hundreds of times a day. The ideal number of times to touch your face would be 0. Rubbing your eyes can cause an eye infection, rubbing your nose infection, touching your mouth infection. So in general, try to keep your hands away from your face. In reality, you're not going to be able to do this because you do it unconsciously every day. I just rubbed my nose. As I said that, I reached up and scratched an itch on my nose. So that's why it's not actually possible. Nevertheless, try not to touch your face.
Can you put a link in the chat or just DM me where you're getting 5 masks? As I wanted to get more, but I can't.
Well,
the ones I got on Amazon anymore.
I don't have a particular source. I bought all my survival gear years ago, so I don't remember where I got it. Probably Alex Jones sells some. Infowars.com. Super Male Vitality.
I'm pretty sure they do.
That we're not officially endorsed by Alex Jones, but
not yet.
Not yet. He's endorsed by us. Actually, he works for us.
So,
all right.
I got to get I got to go stand outside his office one day.
There's a source for N95 masks that most people haven't utilized yet, and that's Staples. Most people don't think of Staples for getting those types of things, but you can get them at Staples. Still, maybe something to look into if you want some masks.
eBay, Amazon. Okay, well, if in Canada, there's a company called Biden Solutions, BIDEN Solutions, BidenSolutions.com. They will have every kind of survival gear. I use them quite a bit.
So, quick question.
The ones on Amazon, it takes like a month. There's like a month back order at this point to get them shipped. So you're going to have to go to kind of a smaller vendor.
So this is telling you something. If you can barely get them now, you better damn well get them now, because maybe it'll take a month and you'll get them in a month, and maybe that'll be in time. If you wait another month, you'll never get them at all. Because so if you're worried about this, get them now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till the day after. Get them now, and don't just get them now. Get water. Okay, go fill up 18.5 liter jugs of water, like Culligan water cooler jugs of water. Go get freeze dried food. Get Datrix ration bars. Get MREs. Get canned food. Get dried food, because if it gets bad, like really bad, say it mutates, and any time you go outside and go to a store, you run the risk of getting a fatal contagion, bringing it home to your family, then indeed, despite the consequences to society, the best thing will be to stay home. I'm sorry, I don't give a shit about my job. I don't give a shit about anything. If it's my family getting a deadly pandemic because I went outside, or my family being okay because I already had the food and supplies for them not to go outside so they didn't get sick and they have to stay home from school, and I have to stay home from work and I lose my job, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to let my family get the Black Plague or Ebola because I had to go to the grocery store to get a can of milk or whatever, or because I went to work for, whatever amount of money per hour. It's not worth my family's life. So I would encourage you all to have the option of staying home, have the food you need, have the water and the supplies, the medicines, etc. now. Get what you can now. If you doesn't need it now, you won't feel like, oh shit, I bought all this shit and I didn't need it. Be like, oh, thank God I didn't need it now. Thank God I have it for next time.
And also, it will be so crazy that the public transportation will be affected because they are a place where people group up, and the chances of this infection to get spread up it's more increasing. So even people probably stop working their jobs as well.
I just went to Staples and they're out of N95 masks. Staples.
Yeah, so everybody figured this out, right? Everybody already knows you're already behind the curve. This is like when a new stock comes out. By the time you realize it's a good stock to buy, it's already been bought or it's already been sold. Like, you're behind the curve. It's too late. Nevertheless, it's only going to get later. So do what you can.
Oh no, I'm just gonna go to.
I guess yesterday was Staples time.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Wait, can I go?
Yeah, it's an open mic. Nobody's talking. Talk. If somebody's talking, please do not talk.
Okay. Anyone who would know this, what's the current time frame on this? Like, with the best and worst estimates, anyone got a time frame?
If you have to ask, you're already dead.
Yeah, you're already dead. You already have it. Your family has it. In 10 days, the symptoms will develop. You're all gonna die, and it's game over. So, go to the strip club. No, I'm just joking. But that being said,
do as much flow and off titties as you can. Abandon all hope, ye who enter.
Basically, no, I'm just joking. But we did some running of the numbers, right? So 4% of people who get the disease will die. The virus will die. So decide how many you think might get it. Would it be 1 million? Would it be 2? Would it be 10? Would it be 100 million? Would it be a billion? Somebody's got open mic. Please keep your mics closed. So, we don't really know. We don't know. But I would estimate between 40,000 and 40 million people will die. That would be my estimate. I know that's an extremely broad estimate, but that's because how the fuck do I know? I'm not a virological scientist.
I'm going to roll the dice on this one and say 4 trillion.
Yeah, I think 4 trillion will ultimately die in the end. But, most of those were invisible trillions that lived in Gog and Magog behind an invisible giant wall.
They're on the exoplanets that we're going to send them the virus to.
Well, good.
There's thousands of planets with humans on it, dude. You didn't know?
I knew that. And we're going to virus bomb them to make sure they don't challenge our superiority in the future.
Yeah, Earth all the way, bro. Fuck your whatever other planet they are.
I found
virus bomb space. We'll go get them. Buy them up. By the way, if you want to buy a dust mask for $600 a pack, you can get them through the Roundtable web store. They're branded with the Roundtable logo. They're $300 a mask.
Yeah, it's just that the reason Home Depot has them is because they're not allowing delivery. You actually have to come to the store.
Didn't even make sense. And does anyone have a fucking thing to say? I'm kind of bored of this.
One more thing, and forgive me if this was already mentioned since I'm late to the party, but for those of you that own firearms, now would be a time to just make sure that you are stocked up on your ammunition of choice, because remember that if things really go south, the people that have not prepared at all may come knocking in a panic, and so you need to be ready to protect you and your family if you have prepared and you're ready and you're self-quarantining for any period of time.
Good point. If you have supplies, you need weapons. If you have weapons, you need supplies. Okay, you need both. I just want to post a new article. New coronavirus death toll jumps to 106 as China announces 25 more deaths. More than 2,700 cases of the virus in China alone.
I think it's the best time to be living in America now. To have your own firearm. Fuck Europe, dude.
Mac, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that I think your voice cut off, but then I was also gonna say another thing, which was, yeah, imagine how funny it is for like, if AI existed, they're just like chilling when all the biological organisms are dying because of these viruses, and it's just like doing the mechanical laugh because it's immune. Shit, man, biological life has so much weaknesses. Imagine disease, bacteria. Damn. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that there are viruses on computers as well, but those can be easily destroyed and blocked against.
Imagine how much the AI is freaking out about people not coming to work, the unreliability of humans keeping the electricity going.
I'm just gonna say I got the disease so I can get famous on the news, guys. I'm gonna send a letter to KXAN, be like, I think I have the disease coming, and then we'll get the roundtable like fucking global famous, dude. I'm telling you, I have to do this.
I think this is bad. Nick. That's bad thing.
I have to do this for the good of the community.
No, this is not for the good of the community, dude. No, you're gonna fucking
a psyop on the news. Do you think this is what? Okay, I'll stop.
Maybe you can
I think it's brilliant.
You can do it by yourself, but don't bring up the server.
No, shut up. I will bring up the server all I want, and I will make us all famous.
NSA Langley is giving me a call. They're saying to shut it down for the time being.
Langley's full of shit. They're in Cedar Park, not Langley, bro.
Got it. So, I think we can call it an event. I do. I think that was really good. I think it was interesting. We talked about the implications, what we think about it, how to prepare for it, what we can do, what might happen. Stock market, travel, deaths, masks, hand sanitizer. We're going to watch it. If it gets worse, we'll have another event when it gets worse. If it gets better, well, then it gets better. We thought World War III might happen with the Iran thing. It didn't happen. Now that's escalating again. Who knows? This thing, we think maybe it's a pandemic, maybe it's not. If it escalates, you know where to find it. Roundtable, original podcast content, covering all the latest in conspiracy and international politics news, debates, fucking moderated events, whatever. We do it all on the Roundtable. Find us on all social media, Patreon, fucking GoFundMe. If you're on it, we're on it, hopefully. That being said, thanks everybody for this event. I think this was great. Thanks for the people who recorded. Thanks to the people who contributed. Thanks for everybody who attended the live broadcast and recording. I think if it's okay with everybody,